It provides a cultural opportunity for students as well as the community to explore the rich heritage of St. Bernard and the New Orleans area.
Called up Garland, Robinette, and was able to get him on the phone. He said, "How you doing?" "I'm doing fine." And I told him about a history lecture series, told him a little bit about what it was like, and I would love to have him back in the community and he could come and sort of give us a little update on Katrina and talk to us about some of his think tank and some of our solutions. Garland Robinette said to me, "Tommy, I'll do this for you. I'll come there and I'll give a little update for 15 minutes, but I don't like to talk, make a speech for anybody for an hour. So after the first 15 minutes, it's going to be our show. We can ask him any questions we want. And if you know Garland Robinette, he's got a common sense approach. He goes right to the heart of it. He does it, whether you like it or not. He's what he is. He tells you how he feels about it. So I think we'll have a very interesting show. A little bit about Garland. I'm sure you may know this. If not, he is a Vietnam War veteran. He's awarded 2 Purple Hearts. He studied in New Orleans Academy of Fine Arts. He is a tremendously accomplished portrait artist. He painted the official portrait of Pope Paul John II on his historic visit to New Orleans. He's also an accomplished classical pianist. He's been 20 years as news anchor at WWL-TV. Once head of the PR communications of Freeport McMahon. I don't know why he left that luxurious job, but man, that's right there. He's married to Nancy Rent for 12 years, and they have 1 daughter, Charlie, who is 9. He's gained national attention from Hurricane Katrina on broadcast and interviews, whether it would be the President of the United States or whatever. He's been through all of them. And finally, I want you to know that he's also interviewed the subject in Spike Lee documentary, When the Levees Broke, a requisition for 4 acts. Garland Robinette has been with us since this storm hit us. We were up on the 2nd floor, out of this water and everything else, and I can remember him on the radio. I don't know if it was the first night, but it was at least by the 2nd night after Katrina hit us. And then the 3rd night, he says, "I don't hear anything from St. Bernard. Where is St. Bernard? What's happening in St. Bernard?" And we were here, Garland, yelling back to you, we're here. Just can't get those damn cell phones to work, that's all. So, anyway, long story short, we have a great speaker tonight, and we are very proud and honored to have you as our guest, Garland Robinette. On the format, once he gets past his little his first part of the session, we're going to have questions and answers. If you want, just come right up to the mic. And I know you have a lot of questions, because if you know, I have about 12 or 15 in my thing.
Evening, everybody. I appreciate the invitation, but I got to tell you, I think Mr. Manning's a very mean man. Walked through the door and he says, "Okay, the elections we've had, terrorist attacks, World War II, destruction of the wetlands. What do you want to talk about?" Next thing I know, he's juggling. Next thing I know, he's got this beautiful girl walking up here. I think he's mean. I don't think he's very nice to me, invite me here tonight at all. Let me assure you this will be short. Quite frankly, I don't give speeches. I'm too damn busy. But Dr. Sherwood Gagliano, geologist, one of the men I admire most in this world, has talked to you about loss in the wetlands. And when I mentioned this to him, he said, "If you don't go, you're in trouble with me." So I'm here. And he said, "You guys college is going great." Let me give you an idea of why I'll keep this speech short. I can barely see any of you, but give me a show of hands, whoever has listened to a speech in the last 6 months. Quite a few. All right, show of hands. Out of one of those speeches, you heard something that you can use for the rest of your life. That's what it is. To start this one off, though, let me give you a quick Cajun story. You know, I'm a Cajun from down the bayou. I was raised behind this Alibon in a humble oil camp, literally in the swamp. One day, Placide saw Boudreaux walking down the road, and he said, "Placide, I've not seen you in almost 2 years. Where you been?" He said, "Oh man, it's been so hard. I've been working on a jigsaw puzzle." I said, "Boudreaux, you've been working on a jigsaw puzzle for 2 years? I've never heard of such a thing." "Oh, this one was pretty hard." And he said, "But you shouldn't have to work for 2 years." He said, "Actually, this jigsaw puzzle, I worked pretty fast." So what do you mean work pretty fast? It's 2 years. He said on the box it said 2 to 7 years. The reason I tell that one is the point of my little talk tonight is something that I've learned from this silly little radio show that I accidentally fell into, don't want to be on, want to leave as soon as I can, and I've gotten trapped because it's a big monster now that's got me by the throat, and I keep telling them, go get somebody else. I'm old, I'm retired, I have to go home and play my piano and paint, be with my 9-year-old daughter. So far that has not worked out, but this is what it's taught me. Keep in mind, I was a janitor at American Cyanamid when I came back from Vietnam. I have no education. I was kicked out of Nichols University, I was kicked out of USL in Lafayette, and I was kicked out of LSU. And I went from being a janitor within, true story, probably within 10 months, I was sitting in WCBS in New York with a guy by the name of Walter Cronkite and Eric Severide, accepting a job at WCBS after I had just got the job at WWL New Orleans. So I've been around. I have been to some strange places. After quitting TV in 20 years, which everybody said, you gotta be crazy. Why would you walk away from this job? It's the best job in broadcasting in southern United States. And I said, because I just couldn't do it anymore. I'm a janitor, or I'm a blue collar. I couldn't take that anymore. So I walked right into, accidentally, a job at Freeport-McMoRan. And after Freeport-McMoRan, I formed my own company, Planet, and I had offices all over the world. And then I sold it, retired, and a friend of mine, David Tyree, had this radio show in WWL, and he got cancer. And he called me one night and said, "Can you spot me once a week while I get treatment?" I said, "Sure, for you, David, I can." Well, the 4th time I spotted him was August 27th. And David died during the storm. I'm up next. What this show has taught me is whatever your dogma is, whatever your strong beliefs are, question it. Find a way to try to knock down what you believe. That may sound a little strange, but I think it's valid. And I never did that before. With all the travels I've done, with all the places I've been, with all the tremendous opportunities I've had, I never did that before. But this little radio show has morphed into about 1 million people 11 months ago to 6 million people today. So when I turn the microphone on, and I tell people what I think in the think tank, I've got to be fairly certain that I've tried to knock down what I think so that I'm not too embarrassed. And I think that's our problem in Louisiana and Mississippi. We want things the way they were. We want to be who we are. Cajuns, we got our own culture. I grew up here. I deserve to be here. And on and on and on. Dr. Sherwood Gagliano that stood on this stage started telling you in 1970 that this would happen. And Through my documentaries from 1970 to 1986, he told me every year we'd take the cameras, we'd film from Plaza Towers, all the way to the lake, and we'd paint in the water. And we'd tell you, St. Bernard in the water, Blackman's probably gone. Gentilly, Lakeview, all underwater. You were told time and time and time again. You're being told again that you're still in trouble, and you're not listening. I told Junior Rodriguez, what was it, 3 or 4 months ago? So I got this crazy guy on a Dr. B from the Natural Science Foundation, and he says your MRGO levees are being rebuilt incorrectly again. Junior said, I'll check on it. Dr. B was on my air 4 times to tell us the same thing over again. Finally, he was on the Lear Report, network television, saying the same thing, and I called the Corps the next day and said, gee, he's saying you're building these things the wrong way. Well, they sent a letter to Lear Report that virtually said he was lying. So I stopped putting him on the air. I thought I'd done the wrong thing. I thought I'd given him and the National Science Foundation a platform to say something that wasn't true. 4 days later, I pick up the Times-Picayune. The Corps has Dr. B and 2 of his associates on the MRGO levee admitting that Dr. B was right. Your levee was being rebuilt again incorrectly by the same people that killed you the first time. We've got to hit a point where we question everything. It's really, really, really important. I'll give you a prime example. On my show today, I had a political analyst out of Shreveport. We have a lot of respect for him. And he told me that our election over the weekend, 22% of us showed up. 22%. Next guest up was a geologist with a PhD, lived here his whole life. We're talking up here, and I said, can you believe that 22%? He said, well, it was just a bunch of amendments, Barbara. Wasn't that important? I said, did you notice the amendments on the levees? That we have to make sure we got people that know what they're doing? Was that important? I've been an insurance commissioner, 3 out of 5 in prison. These 2 dingledars that are running for office are tearing at each other like little kids while Washington watches, while Washington grabs the barrel of the money and says they want to send it to us because of those kind of politicians. 22% bother you at all? Not 1 phone call, not 1 protest, not 1 concern. Next show, the next hour, I want you to see how Mississippi was doing with their CDBG money, since we seem to have so many problems. Well, they got farmland. They got 7,000 people trying to get the money. They've written 175 checks. 3 of their state legislators, lawyers, formed a company to get $1.2 million of contracts from the CDBG money. I got 3 calls from Mississippi. One of them said, wait, those lawyers, it was a sealed bid, so it's okay. Nothing wrong with that. And I said, the perception doesn't bother you. Politicians getting money for people with their lives destroyed. Well, no, it was a legal process. Garland doesn't think so. Your congressional representative doesn't think so. 2 other calls from people that saying, yeah, my mother got a check and my father got a check. That's all. No protest, no concern. 6 million people listen. Why? Because I think deep down inside, we want things the way they are. We want things the way they work. And if they go back to that one man's opinion, you're not going to have another speaker in here 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 years from now. The stage is going to be in 6 feet of water again. Got to change. And let me give you a prime example. Then I'll go to questions. Next week, I've got a couple of shows scheduled tonight, because I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I thought of this stuff, it almost like I drove over here. talking to my executive producer, and I said, okay, next Thursday, let's get on the fact that oil and gas prices are down, but they're going to be back up. Everybody knows that. We got no reserves virtually in the United States. China, India, buying up oil like crazy. They're going to drill for oil off the Cuban coast. And on and on and on. So the prices are going to come back up. She says, well, incidentally, I do all the internet research. She does magazines, newspapers, etc. She says, here's the head of Shell Oil and says, it's no problem. Prices are going to stay low. It kind of screws up the show, doesn't it? But it doesn't, because of the thing I've learned from the show. As soon as I think I know, as soon as I think I'm right, somebody, somewhere in that 6 million is going to show me a piece of where I'm wrong, or half of where I'm wrong, or I'm totally wrong. And the show, I really think, has made me a better person, because I don't judge like I used to. I understand how complicated things are. And I understand that to change on a daily basis is to survive. And if not survive, at least get better and have a better life. Case number 2. Next Friday, the show I'm going to do is CEOs are paid too much money, right? Everybody agree? Right. MIT report here. She gave it to me again tonight. MIT, New York University, they're not. And they give really reasonable reasons as to why they're not. So I just brought these in as examples that happened tonight without me even thinking about exactly what I was going to talk about. And I go back to when I was a janitor. If I had believed that I had no education, that I had nowhere to go, I'd still be a janitor today. When I stumbled into television, if I believed you can't become an anchor with no journalist experience, I would have never done that. If I had not believed that I could run a huge corporation's worldwide communications, I would have never done that. In radio, certainly I would have never done that or never tried. But the bottom line is, I did because I changed constantly. And again, this little radio show has shown me, and if somebody asks me again, a month from now, 2 months from now, you hear any speeches? All of you raise your hands virtually. Hopefully 2 or 3 or 4 of you will say, yeah, I remember this guy said change. By all means, change. Thank you. I like this. I can't see any frowns. Anybody have any questions? Come around and up to the mic. If not, let's eat some more sandwiches.
Didn't even listen to talk radio until after Katrina. I know that's true of a lot of people. Initially, it was because it was the only thing around. Now it's kind of hooked. I was kind of disappointed when you said that this is something we kind of hope to end and not be doing for a long time. When you say that, how long do you plan on continuing at least the think tank show?
Well, that's very nice. I appreciate that very much. 63. It's time to go. It's when you hit a certain age, let me tell you, Dr. Manning that brought that little girl up, I thought to myself, so there's one guy that's slightly close to being daughter crazy as much as I am. I'd like to go home and watch her, because when I quote retired, it was about a 1.5 year retirement, and it was just the most incredible thing. I was there for my daughter every day. I took her to school, I did the parties, I took her friends to movies and vacations with us and everything else. So I would like to go back and do that. And what I'm doing, I'm not trying to be modest, but it needs a young man. Boy, it's hard stuff. I do about, believe it or not, about 5 to 6 hours of preparation in the morning. And when I come home, I'll file on the computer for an hour and then read newspapers, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, LA Times, USA Today before I go to bed. So It's for a young man, but they've told me they can't find anything. So I'm there until they find something. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm one of your sibling members,
Two things.
but I'd like to know what you felt about the election and the two propositions, and how they came out, and your opinions on those. And personally, I thought that getting the right people to do the right job is probably a good idea.
What a radical thought.
Radical idea.
Quite frankly, I was surprised, and let me give you an idea why. It was kind of historic. We did the first broadcast ever from a legislative session live. Nobody had ever done it before. I didn't realize that. So we were right in the heat of the levy board and the levy situation. And the one thing I like about radio, I can say any damn thing I want to. Not like TV news, get, sure, this is, are you crazy? And it's fun. So I was right in the middle of this, and I was foursquare for the new levy boards, and I still am. But again, having grown up in St. Charles Parish, bordering Terrebonne and LaFouche, a lot of those levy board members are friends of mine that I grew up with. And they came to me to change my dogma and said some things where I said, Terrebonne Levy Board really does have a pretty good reputation. They have done a pretty good job. And LaFouche's argument could be made there too, so maybe it should have only been Orleans Parish or whatever. And I truly thought that Terrebonne, LaFouche, North Louisiana, West Louisiana would get to their constituents and say, this is just not New Orleans, they're screwed up down there. Don't pass this. So I was surprised that it passed. I'm glad that it did. There were a couple of issues in there that I probably wouldn't have voted for, but overall, I think most of the good ones got passed. But I got to tell you, 22%. I mean, Mexican elections are usually over 30%. And I just, after Katrina, how in God's name could, what's my math, 78% of us stayed home when we're deciding whether or not we're going to have engineers and scientists on our levy boards? I don't know. Maybe I'm out of this. Maybe I'm thinking wrong in my dogma. Just way out there and tomorrow I'll find out, because I'm sure we'll have follow-up shows tomorrow. But I was 22% to me is just debilitating. Anybody else? Yeah.
I read Wrigley's book, The Deluge. I had some questions about some of his research, but when he referenced you, I was kind of taken by the fact, and I don't know if you want to get into this or not, but you mentioned birds. And that struck me because, in history I've tended to look at things around me for keys. When I saw that, I just said, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't know if you know what he's talking about, but this could have been really embarrassing for me. In retrospect, I wish it would have been embarrassing for me because I'd have been wrong this time. When David called and said he was sick again, and can you just spot me tonight? Again, that was the night of the book storm. Well, I'm getting my family out, but I've covered these things 1,000 times over. They always get to the mouth, and they veer east, or they go west, and we just got through with Cindy. I don't know how many of you remember that one. It was supposed to come in as a small hurricane and then petered out as it did, just came across as a bad thunderstorm. So in my brain, when David called it, if David hadn't called it, the station had called it, I told him that. But with David, I just said to my wife and child, go ahead and go to Natchez. I'll meet you there tomorrow. There's not much of it. If you want to stay home, fine, no problem. But they wanted to go see friends of ours in Natchez. So I go into CC's coffee shop, which was a couple of blocks away from my house. And when I walked out, I spent, as the doctor mentioned, I spent a little time in a place called Vietnam. As I walked out, there's a big old palm tree right next to CC's in the middle of the neutral ground, and it's full of green parrots, hundreds of them that escaped from the zoo or somebody's cage. And the cacophony is so loud when you walk out of CC's, you barely hold a conversation there on the corner. And I walked out and I had my little cup of coffee and I looked up and I said, yeah, good birds. I looked around and I said, whoa, this ain't good. Because in Vietnam, when you set up ambush, when you set up any kind of bivouac, first thing that went quiet were the animals. All the tigers, birds, you name it. Once you got settled down, they came back. If Charlie moved or you moved, they got quiet again. And they would vacate that area. So I walked down to the corner, I looked at the telephone wires, no birds, no cats, no dogs. Then I started rethinking everything. But when I got on the air that night, I just interviewed the mayor. The mayor said, I want to tell everybody, don't panic. Let's just do this in an orderly fashion. And I got up and said, I want you to panic. I don't see birds. I want you to panic. And people started calling me on the way to Baton Rouge, on the way to Texas, on the way to Mississippi and Alabama. I don't see birds. I don't see any. And I'd say, you're in Potterville, you don't see birds. You're in Mobile, you don't see any birds. This is bad. Well, as you well know, the next morning, the storm cleared. And we thought, lucked out again. And all I could think of, oh, damn birds. Oh, they're going to eat me up. But as it turned out, that was the same indicator it was overseas. Bad times are coming. Anybody else? Thank you so much. I like a little background.
First of all, I want to tell you that my car radio is set to WWL, 3 AM stations, all WWL, basically the first one, and 105.3, now you're doing all that.
All the salespeople thank you so much.
And I have a friend of mine who wants to know how Ralph and Alice are.
They know Ralph and Alice. Ralph and Alice, the honeymooners, that's my dog. Ralph.
But I want to ask you about the oil revenue bill. And do you think that...
Just when I said I wouldn't keep you here long, you asked me about the oil.
I want to know your thoughts on that. Do you think that it didn't pass because of Louisiana politics, or do you think it may pass as a result of what happened this past weekend?
Did all of you hear that question? Okay. Kind of complicated, but also, in my mind, simple. It didn't pass for a number of reasons. It's certainly, they're tied up with a lot of other stuff right now. They're getting ready to go on break, and they got elections coming. All of those kind of blend into it. But the biggest reason is, we used to be the city 640,000, then we were 410,000. Now we're 200 and something thousand. Now there's a good chance we will lose one of our congressional seats. Because we didn't listen to Sherwood Gagliano in 1970, because we didn't change our dogma, because we didn't think maybe we're in an unsafe place and we can do something now with doctors telling us not later. We didn't do that. So that allowed all of those things to start happening. Education went down, jobs went away, political corruption became known for, our bad schools became known for, crime became known for. Washington looks to where there's power. And Louisiana, I think, they look at us and say, we joke about third world country, they think third world country. And they don't think we can do much about it. Now what amazes me, and the reason I say it's complicated, and I'm not sure the exact answer, I sat with the President of the United States and the First Lady for an hour and a half in a room by myself. Talked to him 15 minutes before and 20 minutes after. And I said to the President, you're an oil man. You're an oil man. Here's wetlands. There's your 30% oil and gas. It sits at the top of the wetlands. Violet Bush, I don't know how many of you know this, hold 4 major company pipelines. Big ones. Underneath Violet Bush. They can't get a pig that's a cleaning device through most of the pipes now because they're malaligned from the ground sinking beneath. $1 billion a piece. They run from the superport to the refineries. And they're just one of many. So I said to the President, forget Louisiana, forget New Orleans, forget Blackman, St. Bernard. Act like we're not here. But your 30% of oil and gas going to go away. And if not totally, fractionally, or a large percentage. If you don't believe us, there was something called Katrina and Rita. The refineries stopped working. Did you notice your gas go to $3.12 overnight? So it's not us, it's the United States economy and security. And his own response is, Garland, you're right, I'm backing this bill. But they're not backing the bill to give us 50%, like Utah gets, like Colorado, Montana, I mean, Alaska gets all of their schooling paid for every family. And I forget what the dollar figure is, I think they get $15,000. We just had a strike in the Gulf by Chevron that's bigger than the Alaskan oil fund. You know what we get out of it? Now, to me, when you change your dogma, when you change your way of thinking, how come we're not shutting the refineries? How come we don't have a government that says National Guard on the borders? Taft-Hartley Act? They're going to send troops? So what? So what? We're dying here. We don't have the funds for recovery, and we should. So to me, we change our way of thinking. The only option I see, Bobby and Mary aren't successful, shut the oil. People look at me like I got 4 eyes when I say that. And I always say, well then, what's your answer? Mary's bill is the only one that really has a chance. And that's $200 million, I think it is, over 10 years. I mean, $10, $20 million a year. Carnarvon project to Faro, you here? Anybody here from the local government?
I'm here. Carl, I'm here.
How much the Carnarvon project cost?
Over that.
One little project. How much wetlands does that build?
It attempts to build about 100 acres.
We lose football fields every half hour. Not made up. Not a figure that the media made up. National Science Foundation has been tracking it for 30 years. So we're just going away. And here they sit debating on how much we get. And they think we're going to be thrilled over getting 10 or 20 million a year. The Davis Cup, where I'm from, Davis Pond, that thing I think was 130 million. And it's to maintain the salinity levels. Doesn't build any wetlands. We need billions. We needed 14 billion in 1970. We could turn this thing around. Probably need anywhere from 30 to 35 billion now. So it's a great question, and to me, it's the question. We got people being told all over this area, come back home. Come on back home. It's all going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. If you can't rebuild the wetlands, I'm sorry. Hate to sound like a doomsdayer. Woody Gagliano said in 1970, he's saying it now. You can't build the levee high enough. You got to build the barrier islands. You got to do a lot of other things. We got to do it soon. And Washington looks like to me they don't intend to give us very much money, if any at all. Anybody else? And I know every time I say that, people go, oh, this guy's down. What we get him? But it's the truth. This is the kind of dogma we got to look at and think, I don't want to face this, I don't want to think about this, but got to change in order to survive. Yes, me, man.
All right. Yeah, get me in trouble here.
It's
So,
shame.
as long as you
It's
mention all
shame.
your listeners on the radio, we'll be fine. I'll be anonymous, happily so.
But when I say manning on the radio, they think it's a good thing.
Living here on the 3rd floor in the days after the hurricane, I wanted to thank you for being a communications lifeline. We couldn't get anything else out.
They wouldn't let you on the 2nd floor.
They went, they were on the 2nd floor, they stuck me up on the 3rd.
I noticed that.
I didn't know what to think about that, but
Good juggling.
I blame it on having my cat with me. Who knows if that was it. Wanted to see what your impression was, or the radio station, everything, when you didn't hear anything from St. Bernard, what were y'all thinking, or what was the reaction?
That's when I knew. That's when I knew we were in trouble. That moment was when I went. But when we were off microphone, I said to my producer, deep trouble. I started with St. Bernard and Plaquemines. Then I figured, okay, the water problem got that high, probably knocked out some of the cell towers. How about Slidell? Nothing. How about North Shore? Nothing. That's when I knew we were in trouble. And keep in mind, I should have known we were in trouble before that. We're up on the 5th floor with a picture window, probably about a fourth as big as this behind me, overlooking the Superdome. And that thing blew out when I was on the air. I had to hold the desk. Computers went out the window, papers, telephones, trash cans. The engineers, holding hands, came out from behind the glass, grabbed me, pulled me out of there, walked me down the hall, and I broadcast all night out of the closet. So when they say, I think he's out of the closet, anybody else?
First of all, I want to say I'm one of the people from the 2nd floor, and Curtis was welcome at any time. But I want you to explain to us why we don't receive any of the offshore revenues today.
Can you say Leander Perez?
I want you to explain to everybody.
Yeah, it's an oversimplification, but Leander Perez swung a pretty heavy bat back in those days, but there was a guy by the name of Truman who swung a bigger bat. And when they first, I think it was the first oil rig off the coast was here. And at that point, the federal government realized, holy Toledo, we're finding oil not only on land, out the water, life would be a lot there. Truman offered us, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 34% of that. If Perez had signed, if he had signed, to this day we would pay no taxes. To this day, we would get money every time a child was born, like they do in Alaska. And then you'll probably correct me on my figures, but I thought I heard Mary Landry the other day say it's something in the neighborhood of over $100 billion they would have had during that time. And Leander Perez, in essence, not in these words, said, no, this is Plaquemines Parish, this is our area, and we want it all. Truman said, get nothing. And that's an oversimplification. They went through a lot of Supreme Court decisions and 8G money and on, some complicated stuff. And you will get very intelligent people. The gentleman that used to head up the United States, their answer to the MMS, the Mineral Mine Service that lets all the leases out of the Gulf, lives in the French Quarter now. And he's called me on numerous occasions to explain to me that's really not our money. That's federal lands, but we really don't have any right to it. So not only did Truman disagree, but a lot of the rest of the country disagrees with the fact that we should get a share. And that's the history of it, basically. Very simplistic. Anybody else?
Also, thank you for everything that you've done for us.
I pledge.
Considering everything you've said tonight and all the facts that we face and all the things we're staring down, give me one reason young, smart, intelligent people should stay in this area over the next 10, 20 years if you're thinking of building a life and thinking of looking towards the future. Have you seen anything that's emerging other than the doomsday prophecies? If you see anything?
You're going to like me for having invited me to speak. If Bobby's bill would go through, we get $1 billion a year, put it in your tap shoes, stay right where you are. If it doesn't, not my child. She'll be able to sliver on the river if she's here. She'll be in the French Quarter, Harbor of Marinette, the high ground that our ancestors initially, I mean, did anybody see the overlay from the Times-Picayune of the old city? I mean, the floodwaters went exactly to the old city borders. And, talk about changing dogma. In 1970, I lived in Gentilly Ridge. And when they'd sell you a house there, they'd say, the good news is, you will never flood. This is Gentilly Ridge. They'll never go on. And I started working with Dr. Gagliano in 1970. And I remember going, holy Toledo, not only will this go under, it'll go under big time. So I moved uptown. If I was a young person right now, and we don't get those oil and gas royalties, I'd move to Sliver in the river, French Quarter, etc. No, afraid not. Wouldn't be here. Sorry. Anybody else? My wife always tells me, you know what's going to make you unpopular. Just be quiet in this room. And yes, sir.
I'd like to ask you a second question. Of course, we all heard about the 17th Street Canal, levee break, and that type of thing. But there were 14 levee breaks or more, I'm not sure exact number, in Plaquemine Parish. There's 60 foot of water at Empire. There was a bogey boat on top of that bridge there, basically, and that figures out to about 60 foot of water. And yet, none of that made national news. And I wonder if you would care to comment on that?
Not enough people there. Not enough people. It's the same reason Washington won't pay a whole lot of attention to us. We didn't have that port. We didn't have these oil rigs sitting out here. You think they're not paying a lot of attention to us now? Just guess what it would be if we didn't have those two entities. The Plaquemine Parish had not enough people. I took my little girl to fish the other day in Venice. And I got to tell you, as I drove through there, I grew up in this area. And I've fished that area up in the wetlands and ports for almost 20 years. And I couldn't believe the place. I haven't seen it since, I think I was here the third or fourth day after the hurricane with the Canadian Royal Police, as though I came in, and before anybody else, the Canadian Royal Police. And Plaquemines, when I hit there, was all in the water, so I couldn't really see anything as to how it was torn up. God, I got up in that marsh, and we went by airboat for an hour and a half, and we barely saw any marsh except when we took off from Venice. And when I drove back through Plaquemines Parish, I looked at those two levees, and I know there's nothing on the other side. You know Marrero and West Week are virtually coastal beachfront property? Are you aware of that? When I first got to WWL, there had to be 15 miles of wetlands. I remember going with Junior Rodriguez in this parish, going out where Carnarvon is now, where there used to be hardwood cypress forest. And Junior put up a photograph showing the forest, and we had a long lens on the camera. And when he pulled it down, we zoomed in on One Shell Square. That was in the 70s. That was in the 70s. You have no idea, unless you're a shrimper, or oysterman, or a fisherman, what's happening out there. And you know, I wonder, I keep thinking if we go home tonight, my wife is going to say, what did you talk about? No, if you don't have an answer, just be quiet. But I do have an answer. And I'm not sure I'm going to try to do it with my little show or not. I've been toying with the idea, you know, it may be time for marching in the streets, gang. It may be time to say, we're going to turn those dams out. Who knows? You know, we marshal a large enough crowd, angry enough, vocal enough, maybe they'll pay attention to us. I had 5 businessmen, still anonymous to everybody else unless they decided to go with it, thinking along these terms that came to my house about a month ago, thinking about trying to convince some of the union workers to shut the refineries down. And they're working on a little title for it, or motto for it, that in essence says, you guys don't like that nasty old oil and gas, we're going to make sure you don't have the food. It's to a point of, that's the answer. You know, to become optimistic, to become somebody who can say something to make you feel good, we got to get really pissed and go after that oil and gas oil. Anybody else? Have I depressed everyone?
First, Garland, thanks for coming. If you want to retire now that you've kind of run everyone away, tell me.
Well, you join me on Sliver in the River, and I'll tell you more about it.
And you mentioned this a little bit in your responses. For from my travels to Washington, you're right, there's no power, there's no stroke in anyone from outside of our delegation taking up our cause. How much do you believe the fall elections will have an impact on how this changes?
Our fall elections.
Well, no, the fall elections, the federal fall elections.
Well, that kind of scares me because, women of the storm have gotten a huge amount of congressmen and senators down here. We have an election where we replace third, fourth, fifth. We got to re-educate them as to even what's down here construction-wise, much less educate them as to why we need the oil and gas revenue. So the fall elections concern me.
And do you think the 2008 presidency, whether it goes Republican or Democrat, will have any direct impact on our future?
If we march to them, if we say to them, if we can just, I was on C-SPAN the other day after I did the interview with the president of Nationwide, and that's the first really national response I've gotten. I get a lot of emails from all over the country, believe it or not, even Europe and Asia. But that day, we really put on a show what this means to you. I think that's one of the mistakes we make. We keep saying, help us, we need you. Don't worry. We got your culture, we got your report, what we should be saying to it, forget us, your butt's in trouble. Just like we didn't listen in 1970 and they're not listening now. If some kind of way we can bring to their attention, this is really about you. This is really about you. I think that we got to show it. But we're going to have to find a way to do that.
I agree. I'll share with you the issue of the oil and gas industry. As you know, that we took shelter at the refineries administration building. And it wasn't very long that the White House was calling Ellen Stroink, who was the manager, and basically saying, you will call me twice a week, get everybody out of your way, and get that refinery running. So
everybody get that?
It is clear that that's our answer.
If the guy had power all of a sudden, I wonder what would have happened when he said, you know what, you caused this, I decided to just cut it off. Or I'm not going to turn it back on. It's already Katrina cut it off, and I'm not going to turn it back on. And it sounds ridiculous and it sounds radical and whatever, but in my little show, we put away looking for problems, because I think you got them all identified. And when we're looking for solutions, I have a lot of people calling, so we keep looking for solutions for A and B, and there's no real answer. So that's the answer. That's the answer. But to change your dogma to such a point where you realize there's no answer to, I'll make it up, let's say crime. But then you live with that. You say, I'm going to be in a city with high crime, I'll get a gun, I'll get a guard, whatever you're going to do, you can live with that because that's the answer. Well, I keep looking for the answers for oil and gas revenues, and it's been Bobby and Mary, Dick Bitter, and then it's Bobby and Mary, and then maybe it's Mary, and now maybe it's after the elections. We're getting very close to what's the answer. The answer, I think, has a very good chance to be no answer. If you want to live here, you just got to understand you're in imminent danger no matter what they do with the levees. Or two, we're going to find a way to convince them that they're in trouble. Yes.
Garland, they tell me they're about ready to wrap up, so I'd like to make a comment, and if you'd comment on my comment.
You're not going to ask me to never come back again.
It depends on your comment. I do a lot of traveling, and when I meet people now, it wasn't so much so right after the storm, but now, many people tell me to my face, I don't understand why you people live down there. And I have a couple of quick answers that I said, well, let me have myself and all my family move, and we'll shut down 2 refineries and 1 sugar refinery in St. Bernard Parish. We'll also shut down the port in New Orleans, which has historically been a significant thing for the whole country. And there's the shrimp that you eat. I don't know the percentage of that, but I just said the shrimp you eat come down to Louisiana as well. And I said, so we can all move, and all of that goes away That's why we stay. That's our home, that's the home of our ancestors. And it's like telling anybody else, why do you stay where you are? Can you comment on how we can maybe get a grassroots type program to the people so the people can get to their legislators? And that's who needs to talk to the senators and the representatives. Not women of the storm just talking to the top. We have to go from grassroots up and get our relatives and our friends to tell their elected congressmen and senators, do something about America.
Would you say you would do maybe an unlikely answer?
I would ask you never to come again.
If you've listened to the show, you know I like being in trouble. I have to give you a very truthful, heartfelt answer. My dogma is, my true belief is, I'm Cajun. I'm from here. I've been a life here. I deserve to come home. This is my place. And I get every right to. It's America. You know. Two thoughts. I was in a debate with a senator from Utah on the air one day, very angry debate, of which I was saying to him, you know, you got tornadoes, you got earthquakes, on and on, you know, why don't you leave where you are? And we were holding this conversation earlier, and he kind of stopped me in my tracks, because if I do anything well on this show, is I really listen. When somebody hits me right in the middle of the dogma, and I can't think of an answer. Now, when I say this, you may come up with an answer immediately, but I didn't. When I said that, he said, yeah. But he had the figures on what the fractional chances were of being hit by a tornado anywhere in the Midwest. Population versus number of tornadoes. Earthquake in California, good chance it's going to occur every 20 to 30,000 years. Hurricanes in Florida, they're coming, beyond a shadow of doubt. Rich state. Comes in, goes out, wipes out a lot of areas. It's so wealthy they build it back for new people to come in. It comes in here, how often? Could be often. And it stays. It sits. And we all know that if this happens again, they're not going to rebuild anything. So I'm afraid they've got a little bit of a point that our generations grew up in a very dangerous place. And because we didn't shift our dogma in 70 or 75 or 80 or 83 or 85 or 90 or 98 or 2000, this occurred. We need the oil and gas revenues. That's the way we stay in what we inherited, what is our right, what's our American privilege. But we've got to stay safe. We can't say to our children, my generations grew up here. Where I grew up in the Humble Oil Camp, it's not there anymore. It's just marsh. It's all gone. I really like to live back there. I had a great childhood. Love the place. I can't go home. I had to go to a new place. I had to go uptown where it's dry. You may have to make that choice unless we get the oil and gas royalties. That's why I say, instead of 22% of us showing up when our lives depend on it, how about 100% of us show up on these oil and gas revenues? Figure out a way to put pressure that they can't avoid. These businessmen the other day, when they were talking about the possibility of shutting down the refineries, I said, you can't do that. You got the Taft-Hartley Act. The president just send in troops and reopen it. And they said, do you think in an election year they're going to send troops? Let's say they are going to send troops. So what? Think the Middle East is going to like the headlines? America moves on Louisiana. Think Europe and Asia are going to be thrilled to death to see American troops moving against Rome? Or do you think, and this is what I was told, or do you think President Bush says, Kathleen, damn it, let's talk? My guess is a chance he says, Kathleen, let's talk. But we got to get there. We can decide we're going to do that if we can't get the other. And if we don't, then I would submit to you that we're all living in a dogma that we are convinced is right. And like in 1970 on, we refuse to listen. How can I find a better way to end this? But if we get the oil and gas revenues and those barrier islands start being rebuilt and the grasses start getting planted and the river diversion projects begin, then we may not have another hurricane for 20 or 30 years. How long ago was Betsy? 40. We might not have a hurricane for 40 years. We can get it done in probably 15 or 20 years. So we got a shot. Then I would say to young people, yeah, roll the dice. And we're different then than a tornado or an earthquake. But if you don't stand there and just say, hey, this is our place, this is where we grew up, this is where it needs to be. And I truly don't mean that to be negative. I mean that to be a 63-year-old guy on a radio show that he doesn't want to be in, very opinionated. Thinks he's right about everything. And if I've come up with 100 strong ideas in the year that I've been on the air, 99 have been wrong in some form or fashion. But you know what? My arguments now, my positions now, it's going to be hard to knock me off my feet, as I always call it, because now I've listened to people that disagree with me, and I've heard them point out where my beliefs are weak, and I think my beliefs are stronger based on education. Are they right? No way. But I'm going to keep doing research, listening, finding the right answers, and implementing. We do have an answer. This can be saved, but I don't think it is. Anybody else?
And I think this might be the final question. I love sports, good things, but I would really like to have you on the air for my travel time, in the evening. What could this be considered a formal request?
You mean nighttime? You would do this to these people? Is this your friend?
Maybe one from 4 to 7 instead of 2 to 5?
There's 3 people left.
When I get in my car, it's like, oh, we have a few minutes of Garland.
Let me tell you, Shaq, and that's I'm beyond flattered, but Michelle, if I interrupted Bobby Hebert, this guy comes to be very mean people. I would not ask, but I appreciate the comment. Thank you so much.
Say that given your history, it would have been a great honor if you had been thrown out of Nunez Community College. Let's have another hand. And if you will, we still have a little bit of food and drink left. Stick around a little bit. We're going to invite Mr. Robinette to stick around just for a second or two on an informal basis. So thank you for coming.